Like me, you were probably expecting episode 4 of The Penguin to pick up right where 3 left off. Oz and his sidekick Victor have evaded the Maronis and now need to run away from Sophia Falcone, who knows what Oz is up to. For episode 4, I was picturing a white knuckle ride as the titular penguin gets himself out of one scrape after another. But no, the writers of episode 4 commit a cardinal sin. They choose this moment in the series of all moments to give us an extended flashback of Sophia's life. We get to see her as a child, then as a young adult, then as an Arkham inpatient, framed by her own father for the murder of half a dozen women. Now, flashbacks are annoying at the best of times, and especially annoying when they take up an entire episode. But they're utterly unforgivable when they arrive at the most exciting juncture in the story, essentially serving as filler and an apparent attempt to justify an 8-episode order. Look, I get that the writers want to subvert expectations and give us something we weren't expecting, but there's also something to be said for giving an audience exactly what they were expecting and wanting, and especially when that audience has already committed 3 whole hours to the show. If the writers couldn't cut the backstory out, then why didn't they find a way to make it work early on, when we were discovering these characters for the first time? Indeed, all episode 4 achieves is reminding us that the most interesting thing about the Penguin is Oz himself. When he's on screen, the show just works because he's an underdog character we can root for. By contrast, Sophia's story is so unbelievably brutal that it simply doesn't land. She's framed by her own father, she's tortured, she's committed to the hospital for 10 whole years without a trial. Sure, there's an interesting idea that's explored here, namely that innocent people wrongly committed end up inheriting those characteristics of the guilty. But there's no excuse for squeezing this story into the very middle of the series, and no excuse for making us tap our feet impatiently for an hour as we waited for it to end. At times, the Penguin has tried to do its best Sopranos impression, but episode 4 throws verisimilitude out of the window, serving up cartoon comic book characters who are so evil they simply don't feel real. Oz is interesting because he has a certain duality. Like bad guys in real life, he's not all bad. But Sophia's father and the rest of the Falcone family are all so horrible that they're clearly just narrative devices to push Sophia's story forward. I thought the Penguin got off to a good start with its pilot, but as it turns out, that was because the entire episode almost entirely focused on Oz. With each subsequent episode, we've diverted more and more runtime to the supporting cast, who simply aren't as interesting. Shows work best when they keep a singular focus on the star character. The Sopranos is almost entirely from Tony's point of view, ditto Breaking Bad and Walter. I fear the Penguin has too little to say to keep the focus tight and the pacing on point.